Well, listener, over the past decade, more than 1.5 billion people have been affected by disaster that have caused at least 1.3 billion US dollar. Climate change, weak governments, an increasing concentration of people and assets in areas exposed to natural hazards are driving disaster risk supports, especially in poor and fragile countries. This poses a critical threat to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. To discuss this, here in our studio, we have invited Yuni Wahyuningtyas from UNESCO. Hello.
Hello, good morning, Pa.
And also Shelley from CHIMSA. She's a liaison officer to United Nations Agency.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
We're fine, I'm fine.
Fine,
Thank
okay.
you.
We are a little bit service here to discuss things that we are facing today, not only here in Indonesia, but also all over the world. That's about disaster. So we are starting from UNESCO. But Uni, can you tell us, or our listeners, the definition of climate change and also disaster risk reduction? And do you have any data for this?
Okay, thank you, Papani. For the definition of the climate change and disaster risk reduction, both of this terminology has its own meaning. So for climate change, in the simplest way, we can understand that the increasing of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that actually caused by two major factors actually. One is the burning of fossil fuel, and the other one is from the deforestation. While for the disaster itself, it actually is status or a condition where there is lack of capacity, and there is vulnerability that exists in the community, and then also there is a threat. So it's a combination of vulnerability, capacity, and then threat. So if you're talking about in an area where you have actually like volcanic eruption, but there is no community settlement, or there isn't any socioeconomic or livelihood or community that live there, then we cannot categorize that as a disaster. Instead, it will be only like a threat or hazard.
So it means that even there is a volcano, there is a flood, if there is no human, there is no people in that area, we cannot categorize it as a disaster.
Yes, that's correct.
That's correct. Okay. Now, are you come to Sally as a student? So, how could you understand about climate change and also disaster risk reduction?
Okay, first of all, I'm Shirley from CHIMSA. Maybe I will tell you a little bit about CHIMSA. CHIMSA is Center for Indonesian Medical Students Activities. We are an organization full of medical students from Indonesia. And in CHIMSA itself, we have 6 standing committees, which we focuses on, but specifically on climate action and disaster risk reduction, we have 1 standing committees, which is Standing Committees on Human Rights and Peace, that focuses also on SDGs 13. As we know, SDGs 13 is climate action, and there are 2 points that we focus our project on from SDGs 13, which is the first one is climate change, and the second one is disaster risk reduction. From climate change, as we know, there is a lot of causes that cause climate change itself, even from awareness from the society, also the education and the lack of socialization that they got from climate change itself. And as a medical student organizations, it is our responsibilities to take actions based on projects or even sustainable projects, community development, where we help the community to understand, to better understand what is climate change, what is disaster risk reduction, so they would know. From that awareness raising, they would know what is it, what is the definition, and how to prevent it. It is our responsibilities to educate them how to prevent and how to promote the disaster risk reduction issues.
Okay, I will come later for the concrete action for that. But I think UNESCO also have this kind of what CHIMSA does, right? But can you make it a little bit clear? What kind of actions do you
UNESCO, we are actually working in disaster risk reduction more into like cross sector. So we have several of our disaster risk reduction program in the context or in the sector of culture. It's related with the heritage city to making sure that the heritage site is actually resilient to the existing or the future threat. And then we also have in education the school safety approach, which we ensuring that the school prepare and ready to face any disaster based on their based on the specific hazard in their area. We also have another one related with the social and human science. This is a program that is ongoing until now. It's more into like how to reduce the effect of haze pollution that caused by the forest and land fire. So our approach is basically we do the community base, we do the capacity building for the local government, and then also awareness raising. And in most of our program, we work closely with the government, the national or local government, as well with the university for the research and community assistance.
Okay, so based on the UNESCO assessment, so what are the most frequent problems by climate change? The problems.
So the problem from the climate change is that when we look into Indonesian case, it's more into like when I mentioned about the burning of fossil fuel. That's also
This only one, right?
And then also the other one is the deforestation. So as you probably aware that in the last, 3 years ago, 2015 to 2016, we have a very significant haze pollution that actually causing transboundary to Malaysia, to Singapore. So for the haze itself, it's affected not just the area that affected directly from the haze, but also to the other country.
Yes.
So that's why in this ongoing program, we try to work with multi-stakeholders to ensuring that we can actually reduce the risk or the potential threat of the upcoming haze that would probably happen.
Okay. And back to Shelley. You said that there are many activities that. Sorry, what the concrete activities the CHIMSA has done?
Okay, the concrete activities. Again, coming up from lack of awareness, we have mostly our projects is categorized into a sustainable projects in our locals. Beforehand, we have 23 locals around Indonesia from
32,
Sumatra.
33.
23,
right?
yes.
23, yes.
From Sumatra to Jember. And as we know, there is 3 steps in disaster risk, which is the pre-disaster, emergency response, and post-disaster. Our project mostly coming up from the pre-disaster management, also post-disaster management. But from pre-disaster management, there are 2 focus that mainly we are focusing on, which is the prevention and mitigation, also preparedness. So basically, our projects. There are 2 categories. We've done our project local-based and national-based. From local-based, for example, in the climate change issues, we have one project called Trash Care from Universitas Riau.
Yes.
And this is kind of a project where we recycle the uses of trash and then educate or also socialize the society how to manage their trash, how to actually save their environment by managing their trash. And then one project from the example from disaster risk reduction issues is Sporadist. It is from Universitas Andalas, Padang. It is kind of a project where we educate the society how to manage the earthquake, what is the tips and trick in preparedness of the earthquake itself. It was one of our projects, so yeah. But national-based, we have our project in national-based also, which is CHIMSA Indonesia overall. We have this training on International Days for Disaster Risk Reduction. Both we have social media campaign and ground campaign. In ground campaign, we have this training, which is using our human resources, 8,000 members in Indonesia. We make a training for them to learn about disaster risk reduction, so they could be the trainer to the society to educate them more.
Okay, so from 23 locals that you said, you
Yes.
mentioned just now, do they have the same, duties?
Yes, they have the same duties in International Days for Disaster Risk Reduction, which is to join our social media campaign, again
Okay.
to awareness raising, and both in-ground campaign, which is the training from the national to the local.
Okay, back to Mbak Yuni, as there are many kinds of disaster, starting from the age, food, and so which one the UNESCO focus on?
Well, basically UNESCO focus mostly focusing. I mean, we're actually intervening all kind of
Yes.
hazard, but then there is one specific focus of disaster that we're currently are working now. One, of course, the haze that you
Haze, yes,
mentioned, and then
okay.
the other one is the tsunami. The tsunami is that we are focusing on tsunami because the UNESCO Office Jakarta has the mandate to operating the IOTIC, the Indian Ocean Tsunami Information Center. It's a center that provides capacity building education for 24 Indian Ocean state or countries, in which it's being hosted with the BMKG. So tsunami and haze will be like the main focus of UNESCO right now.
Why this? Talking about age, um, I do not say that we do not have age today, but it must be less than maybe in 2015. But UNESCO still take this as a core business, and also tsunami. Yes, maybe we cannot predict it actually, but after 2004, and then again we have here in 2018. So it means there are a range of almost 12 years. 12 years. Yes.
So yeah, for the haze, I mean, most in our project, it's a long-term project. So, and we're working with the partner. We know that probably like people, okay, tsunami is not going to happen at any time, and haze also is not going to happen anytime. But there's still a potential risk or threat that
Okay.
sometimes people often forget. Okay, that's disaster or tsunami or haze happened like 3 years ago, 5 years ago. But what we're trying to do is that, this is probably the type of hazard that, when I mentioned about forgetting by the people, we still need to build, their preparedness, their awareness. So let's say in case of that will happen again, like people will not forget and confuse on what kind of action they need to do, and then also how actually they can contribute to mitigate or adapting to the situation, starting from the family preparedness, individual preparedness, or from the school. I mean, that will be like the easiest way to making sure that the education or the knowledge is still there among the community and people.
And also, Shirley, why the teams are focused on prevention and mitigation? Yes.
That's true. Mostly we focuses on prevention, mitigation, and also preparedness. Why, you ask? Because we are youth again. We see this as a critical problems when the society didn't even know the definition and how to prevent disaster and climate change itself. If they didn't know at first, the first step, they didn't know what is it and how to prevent it, how they would understand it and tell that to their kids or even friends or even other society. And this cycle would just go on and on and on. So that's why we are targeting on mostly promotion and prevention or disaster risk reduction itself, so they would know the first step of it, which is knowing about it and how to prevent it.
Okay. Again, as you said that you are youth, so we are kind of community that I do not say that do not listen well to young people. I don't want to say that, but so what is the challenge you face? I mean, with friends when you are really in the community.
Okay, so as youth, again, I will be future physician, I hope, amen to that. So basically in 2018, doctors or future doctors are basically trained on promotion and prevention. We are not focusing on curative anymore. So what is the most lack in the society is education. Again, education, 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 and socialization. Every single diseases, every single problems actually start from education. If they didn't know, they wouldn't know how to prevent it again. And the challenges mostly what I face as a youth again, which is speaking to the society, which is mostly around 30 or 40 or 50 even years old. We used the assessment approach, which when we went to the community, before we went to the community, we will gather around and do some assessment in that community. So we ask them, what is the most problems that you face? For example, what is the most diseases that is in that community? We ask the people there. We go to the puskesmas. We went to the hospital. Just simple as that. And based on this topic, which is climate change and climate action, also disaster risk reduction, we see the statistics from BNPB or even BMKG or UNESCO even. What is the most disaster that happened in that community or even in that area, for example, Jakarta or even Padang and else. And from that assessment, we gathered around and do our projects.
Okay, good. Yes, but Yuni, the same question. So, what kind of education do you provide for the community, and what is actually the challenge when you are really in the community?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I agree with Shirley because she mentioned about education earlier because we are actually was facing the same situation. I think it's around 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah, it's during the 10th commemoration of Indian Ocean tsunami. So we have an event in Aceh, and then we are actually randomly asking to the student there what do they know about tsunami. So apparently all the students, like I think they're each probably around like 10, yeah, 9 or 10 years, and then they actually don't have understand or aware that there was a major tsunami happened in their area on 2004. So, I mean, education would probably like the most significant entry point that we need to use.
Yes.
So for UNESCO, education that approach that we use is that we are working together with the university because, you know, university, they have a very strong strength in the term of research, and then they also have the access to the community. So we do some research with the university. Like right now we're doing research with IPB, with UGM, with UPR Palangkaraya. And then from there we will get like the information from the community condition about what kind of hazard that exists in the community, what kind of activities or program that exist there, what will be like the gaps and challenge in dealing with the community. So from there, we're trying to fill that gap and then doing our program implementation in that community. But then in some community, you cannot actually come there and then like say to them like, okay, let's say your area is prone to tsunami, your area prone to volcanic eruption and everything, because disaster will be like the last priority of the communities. They will be more focusing in making sure that, you know, they have enough food to survive,
Yes.
you know, they have the opportunity for education and then also in livelihood. So we use that kind of entry point in the context of development. For instance, like through the agricultural approach and then also through education, and then we actually put or inserting the message on disaster there.
Okay, Yuni and Shirley, what I can understand from your explanation that is mostly on the climate change. A few days ago, we experienced a huge disaster in Palu and also, before also in Lombok. So what did UNESCO do in Palu or Lombok?
Okay, for Lombok, as you probably know that Indonesia did not call for international assistance, so we cannot actually respond to the situation. But for Palu, as the government of Indonesia welcome for the international contribution, UNESCO through the Indian Ocean Tsunami Information Center and with the Indian Ocean Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, we sent our international tsunami survey team, which they are working now with the LIPI, with the Menko Maritim, the Ministry of Marine and Fisheries, and then with the Indonesian Scientific Institute, and then also with the BPPT, the Research and Technology agencies. They're working with several of the international tsunami experts to assess the condition, the post-tsunami there, and then to document the result of the impact of the tsunami. The aim is that this data actually can be studied or can be used to analyze for the upcoming of the future threat in the area.
Hope so.
Yeah.
Okay, Shirley?
Yeah, from Jimsa. In Lombok, we actually did something coming up from the post-disaster management, which is we focuses on rehabilitation. So there are 4 people from Jimsa that went to Lombok before. We divided them into 2 teams, which is the first team went there and then do the assessment. So basically we could do the project based on assessment. It's fair project based on the assessment. So we actually assess what they need, what mostly they are lack of, and fortunately in Lombok, they are unfortunate of kind of kitchen things and then how the pan or like frying pan and then some gases or even some shelter, yes, some shelter to live. So basically from that team, they called the other team, which is still in Jakarta, and the team that's still in Jakarta are buying their needs from Jakarta and then went there with the TNI and
Where's the
went
money
there.
from?
And the money is from, basically we did our fundraising from kitabisa.com the first time. So we gained our money basically from there and we could buy things from them and then we did our assessment on also our project with BNPB in Lombok itself. And in Palu, we will do something. We will do something, but we are still in the process of managing our human resources also.
Okay. People of Palu is waiting.
Yes, hopefully.
Okay, just for short, maybe a closing statement, Mbak Yuni, what do the people have to do? And you also, Sally, yes.
Okay, so for the people that probably think that disaster risk reduction is a complicated or sophisticated sector that can be intervened, actually for us to contribute in reducing disaster risk in our area, we can start from our families, from ourselves, just to be prepared and be aware. Like a simplest or easiest way that we can do is, like making sure of preserving the environmental, and then also don't throw like waste in trash. Making sure that you actually properly throw your waste. And then also another one is because this October is the International Disaster Risk Reduction Day that is commemorated around and across the globe, around the world. So the theme for this year is the People-Public Partnership or Reducing Economic Loss. So it encouraged the private sector to also contribute in reducing disaster risk in their areas. And in Indonesia, we have what we call it Bulan PRB, Disaster Risk Reduction Month, that organized by the BNPB. It's a regular event, and this year it will be held in Medan on 19 until 26 October. There will be a lot of activities, quite interesting activities there, like exhibition, movie, training, and everything. So if you're interested to come and look for that kind of and get knowledge from there, you can actually visit the BNPB website, www.bnpb.go.id, and then try to look for the Bulan PRB, and then they usually like upload the activities and everything.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Yuni. Shirley?
Okay, so for me, basically, I want to say thank you, first of all, to RRI and also UNESCO to be our partner in, and also people there to listening to us. Basically, with listening to us, you are contributing in awareness raising in your society and also your friends. And the last quote for me is definitely awareness raising is everything. Awareness raising, mitigation, and also disaster preparedness, because it is the most simplest thing and the key thing that we could do as a youth even, or us as a person. Basically, as what Mayuni said, start from your family, the one who is closest to you, and it takes you to also change the world. So save the world and heal the world.
Okay, thank you, Shirley. Well, listener, that was my interesting discussion with Uni and also Shirley about climate change, also disaster reduction. So education is very important, and the most important thing is that you know you have to do and you have to contribute when there is disaster. And actually, we don't need disaster, but it is better to prevent disaster. So we don't need there is no disaster. And I'm Dalal Pani. Thank you for listening.